Now I just want to show you what is a state in a functional component, right? So let's try one simple example, and with that we will understand what a state is. Now let's not think of this any personal info component or anything. We are going to write few things in this component itself, and we'll try to understand what is the state. I'll remove these three things at the moment. It's not needed. Let's say that I have a button here, right? And on which I'm going to say increment. This is a very common example we see on the official site of React itself, right? So the same thing I'm trying here, and I'm explaining what is actually a state. Now what I want is when the user clicks on this button, let's say there is an H1, and as I said, I want to have an I here. Let's say I have the variable I. Now on click, because this is JavaScript only, so you can say on click. The only difference is in React when you write, because this is actually JSX, the click event which you will see with capital C here, which in JavaScript it is straight away in lowercase, right? But here it is in camel case. That's the difference. Now you want to call a function on click of this button, and you can do that by putting a curly bracket and giving the name of the function. So let's say I want to give a name called add value. That's the function I want to call, and I'm going to write the function here. I'll say add value, and I'm going to write an arrow function certainly. Now inside this, let me just put a console, right? And I display the value of I. Not only that, every time when this button is clicked, first of all, I just want to increment the value rather, and then I display. How about this? So every time I click, right, it should display the value. Now remember, the same value I am trying to show in this H1 as well. That means the DOM also shows this value of I. Let's save this and see what is the output. Now you have this button here. When I click increment, you certainly see that in the console we have the data. It says that yes, the I is getting incremented for sure. That's why we are having this value. But the point is, this place does not reflect the value of I. And that's what I said, that when you have this value as a variable and not as a state, then React will not watch for it. So there is nothing wrong with this code. But the problem is, I want that React should watch for any change on this particular variable. Then it cannot be a normal variable like this. Then you have to take the state. So how will you do that? Let me show you. This is the syntax of using the state. The first thing is you are going to import something called useState. This is just a kind of function you have, which is called as a hook. Now what is a hook? That we will see later on. This is hook only, right? Which was introduced from React 16.8, and that made the major change in React's behavior. But at the moment, you just consider that there is some additional function you are importing, and the name is the useState. This useState function, I'll refer that as hook. This useState hook has a facility to create a state in React. How can I do that? This useState can take any type of values. Now at the moment I want to have just a simple number. So what I'll do, I'll just say 0 for example. I take one array. What happens? This useState function always return an array. It returns an array with two elements always. First is the value which you have given of state, which can be simple number, which can be a string, which can be a boolean, which can be an array like this, or it can be an object literal like this. And we will see all these types of values with useState step by step. But at the moment, I'm taking the simplest form of the state, that is just a number. And the second is a function which allows you to change the state value. And this you can destructure straight away. So I can directly write that the value returned I am taking in a state called I, and the function which it is returning, that I am going to, let's say, use in, I'll say set count. I just take any name because I want to make use of meaningful names. I take set count. So now we have this set count here. So this is just a function which is going to change the value of this counter. Sorry, the value of I, that is. So I is a state, and here we have the function which is returned by the useState. Now if you had written ARR here, that is the array, then you can say like this, const or maybe let I is equal to ARR of 0, and there might be a function, right, which you can say ARR of 1. But instead of that, I can directly destructure this. Again, I recommend that you go through the YouTube video of destructure from my channel. So now we have taken the useState here. The next step is, every time this button is clicked, we are calling this add value function. Inside this, what you should do is, you just say set count. What do you want? I want that value of I should be incremented by 1. That's it. I'm just saving this, going back to the output, right? It's already refreshed in fact, but still I'm refreshing. Click here. You see this? It also displays, because we have the console log, and it displays the value of state, which was also displaying value of variable, but that was not getting changed when you clicked on the button earlier, because it was just a normal variable. It was not the state. Now if I want to redefine the term state, then I can say that state is just like a variable, but it is being watched by your React application. So if there is any change happening to the state, it is going to, the React is going to make sure that the changes are re-rendered. The changes are updating in the DOM as well. That is the difference between a normal variable and this kind of state. And to take a state, you use the hook, the function called useState. There is a lot we need to know about useState, different types of values, right? That we will see step by step. But at the moment, I wanted to share this. So now you can start taking the states like this. Instead of writing this function, because see, this function can directly be called here as well. If you want to do that, you can just say here set count, but there are various different syntax with event as well. So we will see what different ways we have to deal with events also, right? At the moment, we just simply try to make use of state, and we change the value of state using set count. You must remember that this is a kind of setter method which allows you to change the state. If you try to directly change the state, it is not possible. You have to use the method, the function which was returned by the useState. Without that, you cannot change the value of this state. Now let's talk about relative questions. So the first question is, what is a state in a component? So as we have seen that this I was not changing directly, but once we take it as a state, that means React is going to watch for it. And you must remember that directly taking variable will not refresh, will not render it on a page. But when you take it as a state, then whatever changes are done to the state are automatically reflected on the user interface. States basically contain the data which changes, and it is the data which the user sees. There might be different variables also you can take, but they do not affect the user interface. So we don't take those variables, or we do not say or consider those variables as states. In other words, states are also variables which are actually displayed on the user interface. So we take it with a specific syntax provided by React. Here we are using the functional component. So we are just using the useState function, that is the hook. In class component, we have a different way to deal with the state. That also we are going to see in forthcoming sections. The second question is, how do you create a state in a functional component? Or the question can be, explain the purpose of useState hook. So basically, when it comes to declaring a state, we use the useState function, that is the hook. This useState hook has a facility to create a state in React. How can I do that? I take one array. What happens? This useState function always return an array. It returns an array with two elements, always. First is the value which you have given of state, which can be simple number, which can be a string, which can be a boolean, which can be an array like this, or it can be an object literal like this. And we will see all these types of values with useState step by step. But at the moment, I'm taking the simplest form of the state, that is just a number. And the second is a function which allows you to change the state value, and this you can destructure straight away.